What's up, guys? We are here by Highway 49. Behind me is a marker for the Wassama Round House, one of the last Miwok villages that has still the standing roundhouse. Let's go inside the park and see what they have to offer. Let's go!
Wassama Round House State Historic Park preserves the traditional meeting place of the Southern Sierra Miwok people. Here, ancient customs of the local native California Indians are honored and passed down to younger generations. We were greeted by our tour guide, and she was nice and explained that she and her husband are volunteers and usually stay here for 6 months, since the park and roundhouse is used by local Native Americans as a ceremonial meeting place. The Native Americans have been living in this area for the last 8,000 years, passing on their traditions, beliefs, and practices for generations. By the early 1700s, the Southern Sierra Miwok were thriving in the area of Wassama, meaning leaves falling in Miwok. Life for the Miwok revolved around hunting, fishing, collecting plants, and food processing. Acorns, deer, fish, and birds were significant staples in their diet. The Miwok also used fire and other sustainable harvesting techniques to manage favored plants and trees for basket making and food resources. But everything was going to change. In 1849, more than 100,000 Europeans and Americans poured into California during the first year of the gold rush. The impact of gold seekers flooding into the Sierra Nevada was dramatic and devastating for the native people, whose livelihood was tied to the land. Miners rerouted rivers, clear-cut forests, and hunted game for profit to supply the exploding populations in the state's mining camps and port cities. In the southern mines, miners came into direct conflict with the Southern Sierra Miwok and other native groups who lived here. As miners encroached upon, they displaced and terrorized the native people. The Miwok began to retaliate and raid the miners. In September of 1850, a trading post on the Fresno River was attacked and 3 men were killed. In response, a state-sponsored militia known as the Mariposa Battalion was mustered. The battalion of 200 soldiers was ordered to forcibly bring in the Miwok, who had refused to discuss peace with the federal commissioners. During the spring of 1851, the militia killed any Miwok who resisted. Then they burned Miwok villages and their critical acorn storage granaries. After the loss of their traditional lands, on April 1851, a treaty was proposed by the federal government to provide reservation land for the Southern Sierra Miwok. The reservation land was located on the floor of the San Joaquin Valley, east of Chowchilla, Madera, and Fresno. Unfortunately, the treaty was never ratified by Congress, so the Miwok were forced off this land as well. In April of 1858, Special Treasury Agent J. Ross Brown wrote, "In the history of the Indian races, I have seen nothing so cruel and relentless as the treatment of this unhappy people by the authorities constituted by law for their protection. Instead of receiving aid and succor, they have been starved and driven away from the reservations, and then followed into their remote hiding places, where they sought to die in peace and cruelly slaughtered till but few are left and what few without hope." The native people endured dispossession of their land with subsequent starvation, disease, and targeted violence. From the thousands of Indians who had populated this area before the gold rush, only 664 individual Indians remained in Mariposa and Madera counties by 1905. Today, with the help of the state, the Miwoks managed to preserve this area which they consider sacred. Our guide walked us around the park to familiarize us and to learn more about the Miwok people and their traditions. Small roundhouse. A miniature roundhouse from the extra shingles from the recreated roundhouse. Grinding rock. The native name for this site is Chause, the Miwok word for grinding rock. Upon this rock, they ground acorns and other seeds into meal, slowly forming the cup-shaped depressions in the stone. The roundhouse. The first roundhouse or dance house, Henji, documented on this site was a semi-subterranean as noted by the U.S. Geological Survey in 1858. People used the half-buried house for traditional harvest and morning dances, which include the ghost dance, and for hand games. As was customary, the original roundhouse was burned when the chief died. The next structure, erected in the 1880s, was burned in 1893 upon the passing of that chief. The third roundhouse was constructed in 1903 with the help of Jim Rowan, Charlie Rowan, Johnny Gibbs, and Peter Westfall. In 1912, Chief Peter Westfall applied to the federal government for the 78.6-acre allotment of land where the roundhouse stood. In the early 1920s, the allotment was granted. When Chief Peter Westfall died in 1924, the roundhouse was not burned at his request. It continued to be used for traditional dances until it was sold into a non-Indian ownership in 1952. Marriage Tree. An ancient tree in the park. It used to be two trees which was intertwined with each other as they grow. According to tradition, people who touch it will be married within a year. Sweat Lodge. A heated dome-shaped structures used during certain purification rites and as a way to promote healthy living. The intense heat generated often by steam created from pouring water into the heated rocks is meant to encourage a sweating out of toxins and negative energy that create disorder and imbalance in life. In this way, the sweat lodge ceremony cleanses the body, mind, and soul. Cemetery. A ritual is performed here before entering this sacred site. An individual will rotate counterclockwise and shake the evil spirits off.
Very good.
Balik ko naman. You have to be clockwise or counterclockwise.
To your left. Head toward your left hand.
This cemetery used to contain a cremation and mourning area. Originally, the Miwok practiced cremation, but this was later discouraged by the padres and ground burial was encouraged. We visited some of the graves of the Miwoks through the years, including Chief Peter Westfall. Another interesting fact is the cemetery is still another living site, where the Miwoks are allowed to continue burying their loved ones in a state park. Community Center or Visitor Center. A newly built building which is used by the Miwok as a community center during their yearly pilgrimage to the site. And at the same time, it is a visitor center for visitors. Guests will get to see the collection of Native American artworks and basket making, and the pictures of these wonderful people from their history and culture. They celebrate Gathering Day, held every third Saturday of October. It includes demonstrations of dancing, crafts, and basket weaving. So that ends our tour and the brief history of the Wassama Round House State Historic Park, a small area of land which preserved the culture of the decreasing Miwoks and to respect and value their lives and traditions. At the end of our tour, our guides were nice enough to show us their pets, which include this small dog and these talented parrots.
So guys, this wraps up our little tour in this historic place of the Miwok. Until next time, bye.
So guys, if you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and feel free to comment.
Hit the bell, hit the bell, hit the bell, hit the bell. Come on guys, hit